So I want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in Arizona. And I know that you're focused on excellence. This is what you do. This is what we do at A for Arizona. And I want to speak on behalf of that project. As Fatih said, the A for Arizona project is a joint project of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce Foundation and the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Arizona has a blessing of being the first state in the country to be majority Latino students. This happened in 2012. It's actually driving excellence for us in Arizona. At A for Arizona, we decided 3 years ago that we were going to understand what was going on in Arizona that clearly was driving a gain in achievement. We could see this data, lots of people couldn't see it. There's lots of myth about Arizona, particularly our charter school movement, which I'll talk about in a moment, that says we were too much of the Wild West and went way too fast and we got it wrong. And well, just to hit the punchline here, if you look at Arizona's charter school sector as though it were a state, on the NAEP test, we look like New England. We're competitive with Massachusetts. So we're at the top of the country as a charter school sector in performance, but that took shutting down about 90 schools over the past 7 years or so. But it can be done, and we're grateful to the leaders of these schools. The fact of the matter is, even though we were closing schools, we have grown at a pace of about 10% annually in the public charter school movement. So we're serving close to, at this point, probably 118, gentlemen, am I right about that? 118,000 students in public charter schools. Arizona only has 1 million students. We will quickly go to 30% and then 40%, and we'll be at some sort of parity within the next 20 years with the traditional system, without question. So that's what's happening in Arizona. We're probably the first state to completely flip and get to a point where we really have to address the entire funding system, which our governor has asked us to do, because you cannot sustain public charter schools under the current funding system. Our public charter schools are completely funded from the general fund with no local taxes, and they get the same amount per pupil operationally. They don't get money for construction, which is typical around the country. But in spite of that, they are growing at a very consistent 10% or so rate, and that is changing the landscape and changing the quality of schools in Arizona. So what's happening in Arizona is that over the past 10 years, according to NAEP, Arizona has become one of the fastest gaining states in the nation. In fact, we're number 2 behind Hawaii. And in Arizona, we are very proud of the fact that we are a school choice state. We have school choice across district boundaries. You don't have to pay to go to a different district school. You may choose your district school. You may choose a public charter school so long as you can get in. And our district schools, our highly performing district schools, have the same kind of wait lists that our public charter schools have. People go to school in Arizona largely where they want to. Now, that's not mean you have access to a great school, particularly if you are in a low-income community. What we decided at A for Arizona was we were going to double down on the best schools that we had. And we did that because my observation after 25 years in education policy is that the industry suffers from what I like to call a deficit attention disorder. We would rather focus on failure than just about anything else. And if you look broad scope at the national sort of federal policies these days, it's all about achievement districts that gather our worst performing schools and try to force them to be better. Well, I don't have a problem with wanting these schools to be better. Here's where I have a problem. The first thing that has to happen if you want to be great is that you make a decision to be great. You get up every day and you do things in pursuit of being great or succeeding, or at least not embarrassing yourself and your family, right? I mean, we can bring it on down as to what you want to be, but you don't fail if you are getting up in the morning to succeed. You might not be great, and you might need some training, but you're not running an F school if you're getting up in the morning, everybody, and deciding to be great. That's just not true. So my question was, why is Arizona gaining, and who's doing that? Who are those people? I think I might like to meet them. I think I might like to quit talking about who's failing in Arizona. I can see them. Who is doing this incredible work that's pushing Arizona up to the top of the heap here? And in 2013, the NAEP scores for 15 had not yet come out. Dr. Matt Ladner, who works at the Foundation for Education Excellence, who's a wonderful writer. If you have the chance to follow Matt, on a blog. He writes on Jay Green's blog often, but he's an Arizona guy now. He used to be from Texas, and he has a very funny sense of humor. But he and I were following what was happening in Arizona, and it was clear we were coming fast. Most people weren't noticing because stats are boring, but you could see it, and you could see where it was happening. When we isolated low-income schools, so schools that serve over 60% low-income students, we found that the highest density of these schools that were at A, while they were serving very poor students, were in southern Arizona, and in fact, highly placed around the border. Lots of people didn't believe me when I said that. I said, well, here's the address, and there's the person, and there's a grade. You can go see. If you go see, you will see the same thing you see in any excellent school. You will see great culture, first and foremost. Our low-income A leaders, when we started to gather them, what they say about their schools, they do not first tell you about their academics and their scores. They tell you about culture. They'll tell you about their culture. They'll tell you what they think about kids. They'll tell you what they think kids are capable of. They'll tell you how much they prize the fact that families have trusted them with the lives of their children. They talk about that for about 10 minutes, and then if you ask them, they'll talk to you about their scores. This phenomenon in Arizona, coming out of southern Arizona and north, and sadly, the further north you get in Arizona, the fewer low-income A schools you have. So we're trying to understand what's going on here. But this density in southern Arizona is real, and we take advantage of it. And our decision was we should focus on expanding the best players we have. Why? Because first of all, they know how to train people, and they're getting bigger. They themselves are getting bigger. And this is true not just in the charter sector. We found this then to be true in the district sector. Now, it is much harder. I'm not going to lie to you. It's much harder for the principals of our district schools to get permission to expand their school. Many of you probably come from the district system, you got to ask about 100 people if it's okay for you to get bigger. So it's harder, but we did not want to lose the great schools that we have who are low-income A in Arizona. We want them to do that again, and we don't just want to write them off because they're not in the practice of replicating their best models. We want them to do that. We know it's uncomfortable. We want them to do it anyway. So what we do is try to encourage people to get bigger. You're low-income A, what would it take you to get bigger? We see you, we think you're great, we're going to applaud for you, that's wonderful. That's not enough. 1 out of 10 very low-income kids in Arizona has a chance to go to an A-quality school right now. It's getting a little better. It's probably 1 out of 9, 1 out of 8, but it's nowhere near where you want it to be. So we just need for you to get bigger. And my frustration with the way that we approach education is we feel like everybody has to move at once, and if everybody's not moving at once, that's not fair, and we're not going to do it, we're not going to support that. Well, that's crazy. So what we want is we want more money for those schools who are at A, who are serving their kids at A, and who are agreeing to grow. Because the only way to get everybody to A is to provide some particular incentives for folks to go there, in my opinion. You cannot treat everybody the same and expect differential behavior. That's not what you do. Glenn Hammer runs the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, and when we talk about our approach to expansion of low-income A schools, he always says, you know, when I do economic development in Arizona, here's what I don't do. I don't go out and look for the worst companies in Arizona to come in and give us a speech about how we improve the sector. I never do that. I don't go out and go looking for companies that need mentoring. I certainly don't put them in a zone that is failing companies and say, we're really going to focus on these guys. That's not what I do at the Arizona Chamber or in Arizona Economic Development. I look for high flyers. I try to get them more money. I try to get them fewer taxes. I try to get them to agree to come to Arizona. At A for Arizona, we are working with a group of schools that have said to us, we could grow faster than we do. Look up this statistic wherever you guys are, because it's a fun statistic, and then I'll wrap up because I know I'm probably going over time here. In 2014, the 86 schools that serve very low-income kids, so most of our schools are somewhere between 80 and 100% free and reduced lunch. There's only 86 schools in 2014 that were at A, serving that population, and they had about 39,000 kids in them. We looked at those exact same schools in 2015. No new buildings. The grades, we didn't grade last year because we're in this hiatus that all of you are probably in. So we looked at the same schools, and they had grown by 1,000 students. So they're packing kids in. I don't know where they're putting them, but I'm grateful. We also looked at DNF schools in 2014. Low income, same same group, low income, over 60% FRL, D and F schools. Now, here's a sad number. They were up around, trying to remember the exact number, but it's a lot higher. It's probably about 53,000 students in those schools, and it had declined by 2,500 students. So those are very small numbers, but those are numbers in the right direction. We should know these numbers in our communities and our schools. If that A means anything, it's not perfect, but it means there's a culture of success and high expectation for kids, if you're getting it even partially right in your states. It's important to double down on that thing. It's important to let A be informed by a whole lot of things, but including academics, of course, attendance at school, a lot of things you can measure. These schools matter so much to our kids. And we've made the decision in Arizona that we're going to get behind them if they want to grow. A small group of these schools is actually going to meet with us soon to say, we'd like to behave the way Glenn Hammer has companies go to him. Glenn gets companies coming to him all the time saying, I want to come to Arizona, but I need a few things from you. If you give those to us, we will come, we will grow, we will give people jobs, we will improve your community. And after 2 years of convening our low-income A leaders, we get together quarterly. As Fatih said, we talk through what could happen here. A smaller group has decided, all right, we're going to break out, Sonoran included in this group. We're going to break out, and we'd like to propose to the governor that he treat us as an economic development package. That instead of growing at 3% a year, we'd like to grow at 10% a year. But we will need support. And I've seen examples of what they're going to ask for, and believe me, there's money involved. And in exchange, I'm sure the governor will have some ideas about what he wants. But when I went to him and said, Governor Ducey, you got a group, and they want to ask you these things, he was pleased with the hustle. He was pleased with the Arizona brand. Asked me that before. I said, I know, because that's not what we do in education, right? But how great would it be if we made the decision we were going to do what it took? District, charter, advocacy groups, whatever. Let's just challenge ourselves to grow the service of the kids who need it most from this 3% growth. That's not bad. What about 10? 10 could turn into 20. It's completely possible to only serve kids with A-quality schools, but we have to decide. So that's the Arizona Challenge. We're going to try that work. I'm extremely excited to be here. I've never seen anything like it in Arizona in all my 25 plus years of working here. And I'm so grateful to the leaders that do this work. I just stand around and applaud them and hug them and encourage them and try to open doors so they can go talk to people who can make these decisions. And we're very, very hopeful that we can accelerate the pace of what is already remarkable growth, but growth that has not yet gotten us where every child needs to be. So watch this space, and thank you very much for being in Arizona. We appreciate you.